Welcome back to Third Phase of Moon. Blake Cousins here. We got a special for you, a full-length documentary that we shot 4 years ago. In regards to the Project Stargate, is there some kind of program that existed back in the day, $20 million, in regards to this project to try to remote view? There's been documentaries out there, but we were able to ascertain CIA agents that participated in the project known as Project Stargate. General Stubblebine wanted to shut it down, but we have Lynn Buchanan who spoke with us, including the late Jim Channon, who the men who stare at ghosts, the movie was based on. And tonight we're going to be sharing with you the full-length documentary. So buckle up, we're here live with you. Is the program still existing in present day? Did they shut it down, or is it really happening right now? Project Blue Book said they shut the whole program down, but they had to later admit it's still going on. So is the Project Stargate still in existence? Buckle up, everybody. Take a look at the 1st Earth Battalion right here on Third Phase of Moon. Boots on the ground. Check it out.
In the mid-1990s is when the U.S. government declassified their remote viewing project.
I was in the military unit for remote viewing.
What I do know is the Soviets have remote viewers.
U.S. Intelligence and Security Command recruited psychic spying.
So I taught my platoon to be totally stealthy.
A top-secret task force implemented in Vietnam, known as the 1st Earth Battalion.
Then I began to milk out all their paranormal skills.
Is there a secret paranormal psychic war between the United States, Russia, and China?
The issue of whether other countries like China would be using this to gather intellectual information from us and other countries is a real possibility.
The downfalls of a secret spy program.
General Stubblebine, he took me into the commander's office, got up in my face scowling. Did you kill my computers with your mind?
The real men behind the men who stare at goats.
We're being taught to believe there's fear, dangerous people, and it's all designed for us to get off our asses.
What are the implications if our governments have no secrets to hide?
Imagine a world where there's no need for secrets. That would be a true paradigm shift.
In this special presentation, we'll be speaking with the top remote viewers in regards to the origin of remote viewing, where it is today, and what the future holds. The secret spy program, the men who weren't even there. The 1st Earth Battalion. Lieutenant Colonel Channing created the Evolutionary Tactics Field Manual. Its goal was a non-lethal and peaceful solutions to potentially change the shape of war as we know it and save lives in the process. He was known for his ability to imagine and illustrate the future battlefield and its advanced applications. Channing is portrayed by actor Jeff Bridges in his role as character Bill the Django. How accurate really was the film The Men Who Stare at Goats? Was the 1st Battalion a secret paranormal force in the U.S. military? Is Jim Channing still working for the U.S. military or the CIA? These are some of the questions I wanted to find out. My name is Blake Cousins. I run a large YouTube channel in regards to the UFO and alien phenomenon. I consider myself a distributor of information to the public. With over 8 years of research into military programs, it's when I found out that Jim Channon lives on the Big Island of Hawaii. That's where I live. I decided to try and meet the man himself. I got the word. I had 3 hours to meet with Jim at his dwelling, located just 45 miles from where I live. So I called my production team, along with my twin brother Brent, and headed to the Kohala Coast. Destination, Artesia. Now I finally get the chance to meet the man himself, Jim Channon. I had many questions that I wanted to ask, so we got to it right away.
So a couple of things happened along the way. One of them is I wrote Evolutionary Tactics, a field manual to bring out all the unknown intelligences in soldiers. And it was coming out at the time of the Whole Earth Catalog, which you could pass through, and the Army officers were passing through this Evolutionary Tactics manual. So here I break in a little bit to a mythology format. And beside that, for instance, I wake up one day and the phone rings and they say, Mr. Channon, we want to make a movie about your field manual. And it's called Men Who Stare at Goats. And after I saw the script, and because I had worked in Hollywood before, I know these guys can't make a movie that's all straight. So I'm going to have to tolerate, 50% sight gags, and the rest of it. Jeff Bridges is going to play me. Hallelujah.
We have to dream a new America that no longer has an exploitative.
The Men Who Stare at Goats was inspired by John Ronson's nonfiction bestseller. The New Earth Army is changing the way wars are fought. A legion of warrior monks with unparalleled psychic powers can read the enemy's thoughts, pass through solid walls, and even kill a goat by simply staring at it. In this quirky, dark comedy inspired by a real-life story, you can hardly believe it's actually true. I wanted to get down to the bottom of what the true Jim Channon is all about, and the role by Jeff Bridges, Bill the Django. Jim insisted on giving me a tour of Artesia, which is a mini eco-village, dotted with a few exotic small buildings.
In the amphitheater, we have 20 feet of topsoil, so you're able to go down and create this beautiful
Jim also practices what he preaches, aiming for full sustainability and implementing permaculture, biodynamic gardening, ancient land practices, and social architecture to make the land not only self-sustaining, but a heavenly experience.
We come out of this amphitheater with sort of microcultures, small plants, lots of rocks, the way the Hawaiians used to.
Jim's first year as lieutenant colonel in Vietnam, he began to flesh out the early beginnings of the 1st Earth Battalion and its clairvoyant applications on the battlefield.
In the Army, I see what happens in an emotional situation in a completely conflicted set of ethics, and at the same time, I'm learning to sit in a deep forest for most of the time. So I became fundamentally welded to nature there, and then welded to the way we had to move through the jungle to find these so-called Viet Cong and search and destroy them. At the same time, so I taught my platoon to be totally stealthy. Then I began to milk out all their paranormal skills, and I had a whole set of sentient intelligences working with me. So I came home a year later with all but one of my guys, and we never had to kill an innocent villager.
Again, we're just live right now, right here at Third Phase of Moon. We appreciate everybody joining us. I'm just doing a quick pause. Again, support the channel. There's this applause button that YouTube has recently put out there, or some kind of thank you button. And then there's the super chats and all that stuff. We're putting out this documentary that we did boots on the ground reporting across the United States to talk to these CIA agents. Let me tell you, Third Phase of Moon is trying to bring you this as low budget as possible, but in high regards to quality. So don't forget, everybody, if you can support us in any way, it really helps getting these documentaries out there for free. And that's what we're doing right now. So let's get back to it.
the psychic phenomenon known as remote viewing begin? And who started it? The late Ingo Swann was an acclaimed psychic, artist, and author for being the co-creator of remote viewing, and specifically the Stargate Project. The Stargate Project was the code name for a secret Army unit established in 1978 at Fort Meade, Maryland by the Defense Intelligence Agency to investigate the potential for the psychic phenomenon in the military and domestic intelligence applications. Swann helped develop the process of remote viewing at the Stanford Research Institute, experiments that caught the attention of the Central Intelligence Agency, which was developed and tested with CIA funding. He is commonly credited with proposing the idea of controlled remote viewing, a process in which viewers would view a location given nothing but its geographical coordinates. For the past 30 years, the United States government has secretly trained a select corps of military personnel in the art of remote viewing, the psychic ability to perceive the thoughts of experiences of the others through the power of the human mind. Now, Lynn Buchanan, a world-renowned expert on remote viewing and its potential. He resides in Alamogordo, New Mexico. He was assigned nearly a decade to a clandestine U.S. Army intelligence group.
Thanks 3OG for the 2.79 super chat. Appreciate that. Keep them coming in, guys. We need the help. Again, this took a lot of work. We've put a lot of time in making this documentary. Again, we're sharing it for free right here in Third Phase of Moon.
Buchanan trained military personnel who utilizes the inherent psychic abilities as a data collection tool during the Iran hostage crisis and the Chernobyl disaster, including the Gulf War.
Back in the early 80s, I was a sergeant first class in the Army working for the intelligence command. I was in Augsburg, Germany, and an incident happened, parts of which are still classified, so I don't usually talk about it. It cost the U.S. government millions in computers. Commanding General Bert Stubblebine of the U.S. Intelligence and Security Command came and got me, took me back to D.C., and wanted to form a unit that would do the same to enemy computers.
General Bert Stubblebine has an impressive career, including being credited with the redesigning of the intelligence structure of the entire U.S. Army.
Stubblebine, that's the guy that offered Dr. Greer $2 billion, apparently. And Jan and Gilla, thanks for the $2 super chat. Appreciate it. Again, we are really happy to bring this documentary in regards to this remote viewing project. Has it been totally teared down, as they say, or are they still going down this rabbit hole? If it is in reality a fact that we can remote view, we're trying to find out.
This was apparently somehow accomplished without the man ever becoming aware of a 25-year-old CIA mind control effort that exploits thousands of unlisted personnel at locations, including the Army's Edgewood Arsenal. Stubblebine claims he was never into the mind operations program. However, he now believes mind control projects continued after the Congress ordered them halted in the 1970s.
Congress said that smote of mind control, and they wouldn't do it because they had been caught in the 60s doing mind control on U.S. citizens. They really didn't want to have anything to do with anything like it again. He took me out to Fort Meade to this unit that had been doing something called controlled remote viewing. I had never heard of that before. Didn't know what it was, but he just put me in that unit and said, "Here, you're going to learn to be a psychic." And you know, in the military, a general tells you that, yes, sir, I'll do it. I was in the military unit for...
There he is, Lynn Buchanan. Again, we're speaking to the people that were involved with this project, and they seem to be really cooperative in telling their story, unlike a lot of other people that wanted to debunk this, you know, Project Stargate. Does remote viewing really exist? That's the big question. We want to thank Johnny Garcia with a $5 super sticker. Appreciate that. Let's get back to the program.
Remote viewing for the rest of my military career, which is very unusual because, soldiers get moved. But I was there for the rest of my career and wound up being the trainer for the unit. Because it was a black unit that didn't exist, I officially didn't exist, and so I had to give up all rights to promotions and everything else. But it was worth it. Oh, it was fantastic. It's the most interesting job I've ever had.
So I meet up in Woodland Hills to meet Marty Rosenblatt, one of the co-founders of the Applied Precognition Project. Since the methods of remote viewing were made available to the public, advances in techniques and technology have made dramatic improvements in accuracy. Utilizing his background in physics, understanding the role of precognition and empathy, he explains the role of consciousness and how humanity's collective mind can communicate across time.
I first learned.
Appreciate it. 3OG with the $6.99 super sticker. Appreciate that so much. And then Clyde Laws Rules is supporting with the $4.99 donation. Appreciate that. Let's get back to it. Again, Marty Rosenblatt. This is the man we met up with in where was it, Brian?
I think it was in like Ventura, and it was over there in Van Nuys. And this guy actually plays the market with the stock market with remote viewing. And when we showed up to his establishment, this guy's doing really well in remote viewing financially. We found this very interesting.
And Marty Rosenblatt was embedded within these projects with you're about to find out, but it's interesting. This guy has made a lifestyle of success because of his remote viewing techniques, as he says. Does it really work? We're not sure, but again, the CIA was dealing with this, and what Marty tells us as we're on location over there in Los Angeles and Ventura, again, boots on the ground reporting, he has a lot to say. Listen to this.
Learned about remote viewing using that name in an article that was published in the IEEE in the early 1970s. At that time, I had security clearances. I was working for a private company doing contract work, predicting nuclear weapon effects, but that gave me contacts with the Defense Intelligence Agency. And the Defense Intelligence Agency, I went and showed them this, and they sent me to Stanford Research Institute, where I met Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, and their work was incredible. The first time I had ever seen scientific work on psychic phenomenon like remote viewing.
Hundreds of remote viewing experiments were carried out at the Stanford Research Institute from 1972 to 1986. Physicist Russell Targ was a co-founder of the secret CIA-funded program into the investigation of psychic abilities. Hal Puthoff directed the CIA program and collaborated with Russell. Both Hal and Russell captured in this 1974 photo with retired police commissioner Pat Price and CIA contractor monitor Christopher Green. Both Hal and Russell were utterly convinced of the reality of psychic abilities. They learned the accuracy of reliability of remote viewing was not in any way affected by distance, size, or electromagnetic shielding, and discovered the more exciting of the demand and task, the more likely they were successful. One of the main targets of the operation was the Kremlin.
Yeah, the military got involved officially in like the 1970s, largely because the Soviet Union was involved. We were somewhat concerned at that time about, with the Cold War and all that, what was going on? Was this real? And in fact, there was a guy, Skip Atwater, in Fort Meade, and he was directed to start a unit to look into this. And they started bringing in remote viewers from the military, and that lasted for like 20 years.
Skip Atwater was the operations and training officer for the secret remote viewing program. He recruited and trained an elite group of professional intelligence officers to do remote viewing for the Department of Defense and various members of the national intelligence community. He initiated the U.S. Army's remote viewing intelligence program, now known to the world by the code name Stargate.
How did I know I had the capability of remote viewing? I didn't. General Stubblebine stuck me in this unit, and they were doing all of this remote viewing work, and I watched them, and they trained me in it. But for the first months or so I was there, I thought, there's a gimmick going on. There's something. They can't really do this. And finally, after they had taught me all of the steps for how to do it, they started handing me pictures that were sealed in envelopes and saying, without opening the envelope, describe the picture. And I thought, that's crazy, you know. And of course, there was no way I could do that. But I followed the steps that they had taught me and opened the envelope, and I had described the picture. And all of a sudden, well, I knew I hadn't cheated. And all of a sudden, I thought, maybe this works. And
Are you listening to this? Lynn Buchanan, insider, and all of a sudden he's coming forward on camera saying he believes that he could remote view. And again, we're watching the testimony from Lynn Buchanan, among others, tonight. And it is quite amazing that we're hearing this kind of testimony and they're 100% behind it. Brett.
Yeah, just want to throw it out there. It seems like people are trying to throw everything under the table, especially from Project Blue Book from the very beginning. And now they're kind of transitioning where they drop the ball. The government says, oh, they're not doing anything. And then we get ATIP. I guarantee these guys are always working this style of remote viewing. It's not going to stop. They never canceled this project.
Yep. Project Blue Book was never canceled. In my opinion, Project Stargate wasn't canceled. They just changed the name. And again, this is quite amazing stuff.
And I want to say most people in this community are full of thanks for joining us, man. You're on it. Appreciate it.
Let's get back to it.
I took to it like a duck to water, and I was extremely happy to spend the next 8.5 years in that one military unit doing that. Fantastic job.
How did the 1st Earth Battalion materialize? Where did the people come from? Well, we started as a think tank, but once we popped the 1st Earth Battalion with the field manual, the country went berserk, and all these really talented, creative people came to our meetings. So that was the battalion. It wasn't soldiers that were acting in a new way. We hadn't gotten that far. But at that point, the whole Army went on a mission to collect extrasensory abilities.
It was a reasonably large program, put about $20 million of the U.S. government's funds into the remote viewing project. In fact, one with Joe McMonagle, he was asked to get information about a facility that was hidden. It was in a mountain in the Soviet Union. Well, Joe said they're building this huge submarine, much bigger than anything that anybody had, including the Soviets, of course. And at first the CIA thought that was crazy. They weren't even that close to water. He even predicted when it was going to be launched using remote viewing. Well, it turned out a few days either before or after, he wasn't exactly on, but pretty darn close, they dug a trench and put out the biggest submarine that had ever been launched. And that information came first through remote viewing. Remote viewing kind of shows the ultimate connectivity in our world. We're all connected. When we accept the reality of the capabilities of consciousness, which include remote viewing, include precognition, include the ability to influence matter at a distance.
Did you just hear Marty Rosenblatt say actually controlling things physically with your mind? Again, we're just looking for the answers, but it's amazing some of the information that we receive when we ask the questions. And we're really happy that you guys are joining us tonight. We're sharing this documentary. Again, we went across the country to bring this to you, and we're doing it right now for free, this documentary. So any kind of support, any kind of super chat, again, we have the PayPal in the description, but it really helps because these are high-end documentaries that we're trying to bring to you and create a discussion in real time. Listen up.
That we'll be much better for it because the universe works that way. Science has in fact proven remote viewing. It's proven precognition using all scientific techniques. Guess what? Most scientists still won't believe it because it is so different, which is what makes it a paradigm shift.
So you're saying right now that there's people within the military that could remote view into sensitive military factions from other governments?
Yes. But what's not normally known is that you imagine one person has got this amazing ability to project themselves somewhere into the enemy territory, read the general's battle plan, and come back. 12 people do way better than one person. And they do it by layers, and it's a real protocol. One of the layers is sort of emotional. One of the layers is shape. One of the layers is color. And they go after these as a group, and then they do a great filtering process in order to finally pop out what they believe to be true.
As far as what the government is doing now, I sincerely hope that they still have a project going. When you retire from a classified unit, they quit telling you things. And so I don't know, but it would be really dumb of the government not to have an ongoing project like this.
The issue of whether other countries like China, but any country would be using this to gather intellectual information from us and other countries is a real possibility. It's hard to imagine that some countries would not do this. The kind of ethics involved when you see somebody else as your enemy and possibly doing the same to you, and we certainly know that there's a lot of cyber espionage.
Are different countries around the world doing cyber espionage? Are they doing remote viewing? Are they still practicing these techniques if they believe that they work? We're just watching Stranger Things right now. And again, that's fantasy, but could that be based on reality?
Yeah, it's interesting. We just wrapped up the episode season 7, and that was awesome. Stranger Things, and it seems like fantasy and reality and even media kind of represents and comes into a full circle. But these guys were doing it a long time ago with Project Stargate, and what's going on here, I think, is a clear example of what's really been going on for such a long time.
Yeah, Ref Journalism asks, is Dr. Greer teaching these methods? In reality, what's going on is that Marty Rosenblatt, Jim Channon, Lynn Buchanan, they've been doing this for decades. So that's a question that I really can't answer for you, but I can say that these guys that we're interviewing had no affiliation with Dr. Greer. They're just doing their own thing. These guys were embedded within the CIA, and we're talking to them.
Yeah, we got Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann. Everything's participated in this, and we did the investigation. We actually went down the rabbit hole investigating everybody in this, and this is fantastic that we could actually bring everybody in this documentary talking in their own viewpoints and how it all comes together.
Yeah, some people say we don't do much work here, but again, we're bringing it to you, boots on the ground. And again, it's not all about the money. We're trying to get this information out to everybody, and big things are happening. Let's just roll this documentary, watch, and support if you can. Any super chats, any of this stuff really goes a long way.
if you will, going on. I would have to think, and I haven't been thinking much about this, but now that you asked the question, I'd have to think that that is going on. Now, how successful are they at it? I don't know. And I hope, just like we have counter cyber, right, to stop hackers, I hope our government is in fact coming up with techniques to protect our information, because we're not through the paradigm shift yet where there are no secrets.
As far as destroying the enemy computers, it was a great plan, and General Stubblebine was all set up to form a unit to do this, and it would have worked. The Russians were doing the same kind of research, and they were having success at it. We could have had success at it too, but Congress said, no, that smites of mind control, and we're not going to fund that because that's political death, you know, to any politician. And so they wouldn't fund it. And because they wouldn't fund it, it was a matter of money. In Washington, D.C., there are always two answers to any question you can ask. One is politics, the other is money. The politics and the money were both against such a unit, so it didn't happen.
Human nature is going to have to change, because we do have some evil people out there. I have this faith, and there's some things you just can't prove. The good, once we accept that consciousness, that our own abilities are so incredibly powerful that there's no need for evil. The evil that we see, and it looks like evil, it is evil, perhaps can only be understood in this bigger concept of the ultimate good.
As intellectual property and nuclear weapons become more dependent on computers, the vulnerability of governments to protect oneself becomes apparent. The CIA's mission was to apply psychic super soldiers to penetrate the enemy's electric grid, control networks, and the missile navigation data. At one point, Lynn Buchanan and General Stubblebine realized that this power is very real.
I've always, since childhood, I was one of those poltergeist kids, you know, that I get angry, things fall off shelves and all that. Well, I had written a computer program for the computer systems, and I was to give a demonstration of the computer program. This other sergeant who had wanted that job and didn't get it, I was picked over him, came in while I was in combing my hair and making sure that there were no wrinkles in my uniform for the presentation. He came in and did something, and when I gave the presentation in front of all these generals from all these different NATO countries, I gave my little song and dance, and then I hit the enter key to start the program and demonstrate it, and the computer went out. It cost the government, I hear, an estimated $500 million to replace computers, to replace systems and electronic systems and all that. General Stubblebine, of course, being the head of the Intelligence and Security Command, got wind of this. He took me into the commander's office, got up in my face scowling. "Did you kill my computers with your mind?" I just sort of heard myself say, "Yes, sir, I did." And this grin came across his face, and he said, "Far effing out, have I ever got a job for you."
You can't deny that their remote viewers can pick up information from the future. So precognitive remote viewing is a reality as well.
It's an intelligence collection effort. We're teaching it to police departments, to find missing children, to find missing evidence, and so forth. And it's very quietly being used for businesses. We've done projects for moon exploration, research and development of electronics, for development of businesses, and so on.
Is remote viewing paranormal? First of all, I hate that word, because remote viewing is real, like many other psychic phenomena. Telepathy, precognition, all of those are real. Capabilities, natural capabilities of human beings, so I don't like that term. I also believe it is indeed spiritual. It is getting to the very essence of what consciousness can do. And this thing we call consciousness, which is right now on the forefront of science in terms of trying to be understood. In fact, I believe consciousness is the fundamental. You're not going to get a scientific theory which can explain consciousness, because consciousness is at the very fundamental nature of reality.
A lot of soldiers who are home with their families now, and they'll never know that the information that we provided kept them from being killed.
Do you believe Lynn Buchanan? He's talking right now. And that's what's interesting when we met these people in person and went down the rabbit hole of Project Stargate. And what Lynn Buchanan, look at his demeanor here. He experienced something. He knew something was going on, along with General Stubblebine. And there was this conflict. But wow, this is pretty amazing looking at this. Again, we shot this in 2018. This is 4 years ago when we shot this documentary. But to look at it now and to hear what's going on in the Congress and these hearings and what's relevant today, this is pretty amazing, because I believe that Project Stargate was not eradicated. It still might be in present day, and they're not telling us all kinds of projects that they keep changing the names on these projects, right?
Yeah, I loved it when Lynn Buchanan says, "Did he destroy these computers with your mind?" And then Lynn Buchanan says, yeah. And the guy, he loved it. And this is kind of exactly what we're talking about. This new format of, I don't think this has ever been destroyed. I think this operation is still going on, Project Stargate, and it's just like Project Blue Book. This is still on the table and it has never disappeared. Because why would he drop this if it worked?
Stargazer, Rough Journalism, Dave Alia, Bex. We got a lot of people joining us tonight.
Unidentified S4, good to see you too.
Yep, we got all the people that are interested in the subject. Again, Project Stargate, is it real? Keep watching this free documentary we're putting out right now on Third Phase Moon, boots on the ground, talking to the people. Watch.
The ups are when we had success. The downs were mostly when we had success in the remote viewing and nobody would pay attention, and because of that, nothing happened. One of the sessions I had done was Gaddafi. They were going to raid Gaddafi and try to kill Gaddafi.
Air and naval forces of the United States launched a series of strikes against the headquarters, terrorist facilities, and military assets that support Muammar Gaddafi's subversive activities.
1986, United States bombing of Libya, codename Operation El Dorado Canyon. In Libya, there were over 40 casualties and one U.S. plane was shot down due to the lack of the military abilities to promptly pursue Lynn Buchanan's predictions. Could have perhaps prevented worldwide catastrophes.
I predicted the Chernobyl meltdown 3 days before it happened, and I told them it was going to happen. Described the way it did happen, and nothing was done about it. When Saddam Hussein pulled out of Kuwait, I said, you've got to drive him to the west and then north, because if you drive him to the north, he's going to set fire to all these wells. And they said, oh, he wouldn't do that. Well, they drove him north, and he did.
The applications of remote viewing go far beyond the battlefield. Are the remote viewers of today reaching out to a universal consciousness far beyond our Earth?
Every thought that any sentient being, any person, any animal, anybody, anything that has consciousness here on Earth, anywhere in the universe, ETs, are all collected in this universe of collective consciousness. And what seems to be the reality is each of us has access to that entire UCC, Universe of Collective Consciousness. We can go into it to get information from the future, In fact, that's one of the most valuable things about precognition. It shows that we can get information from the future that blows the normal concepts of time. We live in a universe which is really integrated into a oneness through this universe of collective consciousness.
Do you think that the world's ready for alien visitation on a massive scale in front of the public eye?
I think it's going to be done like any good movie is going to be done.
Again, Jim Channon. We were so lucky enough to meet this fella. This was the whole basis of the movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats. Jeff Bridges' role was this guy right here. You're looking at him. And we were so lucky enough to meet him and talk to him right here in the big island of Hawaii. And wow, it's unfortunate. He's passed away. He's not around, but he said so much, Brent.
Yeah, he kind of broke down what it would be when disclosure really happened. This is pretty exciting. And it's going to come up in this documentary. But man, this guy really broke it down, and he actually told us like 4 days before he passed away. He actually said something very peculiar. He gave us a call and he said, "The mothership's here." I can't read into everything, but he said the spaceship's here and they're ready to take me away.
He also did tell me, I got a call early in the morning, a few days before Jim Channon. You're looking at him right now. Again, Jeff Bridges played his role on The Men Who Stare at Ghosts. He told me, he says he's so happy that people are going to be able to see his story after watching a rough edit of what you're watching right now. And we're so happy that we're able to put this out there. Jim Channon, rest in peace. And again, thanks so much for the support and all the super chats. We're putting this out for free. Let's listen to the late Jim Channon, head of the 1st Earth Battalion.
On page 78 of the script, there's the reversal. And right now we're going through the reversal. We're being taught to believe there's fear, dangerous people, and it's all designed for us to get off our asses and do something. So it's a perfect drama. Why would they invent a civilization like this on a starship planet with so many dimensions not to have a graduation? And you know what? They don't have to come in a big clunky ship. All they have to do is just appear sitting next to you as they join you in the 5th dimension, or you join them in the 5th dimension. Imagine having a kind of people who could live within the crust of a planet, you know? Well, it'd be really nice if they were big and strong and white so they could see each other down there, and they had some scales on them so that they wouldn't scratch themselves as they were moving through, and they had night vision eyes. So these terrible Dracos are perfect for an interterrestrial life where they have and create all the things they need. There's between the top of the surface and say 60 miles down, it's honeycomb. And every creature has a place. You know, I mean, if snakes were 30 feet tall and stood on legs, you'd be scared of them too. So the trick is for us to wake up to a loving connection so we can all do this thing together.
There are ETs, extraterrestrials, out there someplace.
I want to thank Paul Stam for the $20 super chat. It's amazing that we're doing this live right now. Again, it is amazing what Marty Rosenblatt saying. He believes there's extraterrestrials all around us. And then again, the late Jim Channon speaking with us, boots on the ground, trying to figure out this mystery. And again, this remote viewing aspect is quite amusing to even think about, because we try to do it ourselves if we can. And I'm sure a lot of people think that they could have this power. Did the CIA actually harness it?
Yeah, that's a big question. Is that what's going on? I want to thank Paul Stam again for that $20 super chat. I wish you had a question for that too, because we'd like to address. If anybody wants to give a super chat, we're ready to talk or and ask the questions that's being portrayed in this documentary.
Absolutely. We're live right now. We're joining you from around the world. Appreciate it. And appreciate that, Paul Stem. Again, if you guys want to like lay in some kind of super chats with a question in regards to this documentary, we would appreciate it.
The fact that we would be the only ones here in the entire universe that have consciousness. So once you accept that, then to assume that we're the people who have had it on this planet for the longest is also ridiculous. I believe there are ETs. I believe there are ETs who are probably millions of years more advanced than us, older than us, that have probably gone through similar stages. Basically, I think they're good. Otherwise, with the technology that they apparently have, why are we still here? If they wanted to destroy us, I would think that they could. And that's one of the reasons I believe that consciousness, the advanced consciousness that I presume they have, because they're thousands of years ahead of where we are, and I believe our next paradigm is going to be where advanced consciousness is the accepted norm. And I think they're
Rio
there
G
and are
699 super
probably
sticker.
watching our
Appreciate it, bro.
transition with great interest and probably rooting for us because they know on the other side there is a wonderful new reality, an expanded understanding and really appreciation of the marvelous universe we live in.
The important thing here to know is, as we think about our future, we should be thinking we're about to be the new neighbor in the solar system. Don't you think we ought to consider what they would like as a new neighbor? What would the behavior of the new neighbor be? And so I would say, taking care of their planet, well, I don't know if they're doing such a good job with that. My dream and what I'm preparing the Army for is to be at the watersheds with the veterans, to set up the starports so that aliens will know where to come, and then they get the people in the country by the water will get the high-tech energy devices and all those other devices. And I think there's not a chance in hell that they won't melt the whole biosphere down with love, and that's what I think is going on right now. They will use like 6 days of sweet music coming from we don't know where, and I've actually written that landing scenario, and so my guides can at least, because you know, if somebody on planet Earth doesn't have the consciousness, they can't give us the results. We have to earn the consciousness before they can operate with it. So this would be a series of atmospheric, musical, temperature shift, smells for kind of 3 days. And then certain things would appear, I think. And they could appear in the country first, that's good. They could appear at the indigenous tribal places first, that's good. All I can say is they're not going to pull this off without having arranged the biosphere to be the most beautiful, soft, warm, loving container they can possibly make out of it. So you're starting to feel it change right now. And if you're not playing with that new feeling, I think you ought to try, because you want to get plugged into the spiritual dimension as soon as you can, so you're not panicked. You know, if you see some blue person arrive with the newspaper in the morning, yeah, no.
Jim is telling everybody, don't panic if you see them. Get ready. It's happening and something might go down. Just be aware that if something does appear like that, it seems alien, just keep it cool. That's Jim Channon's. Look at this guy. He's like this guy that's embedded within the first Earth Battalion that worked within the CIA, but his demeanor is really calming.
Yeah, this is interesting because I kind of recall everything that's happening in the real timeline, and this is before the major media and a lot of people were coming in on the scene calling everything a threat, a national security emergency. And now Lynn's our friend Jim Channon is saying that this is all a way of awakening. And right after he died, unfortunately, it seems like the whole media is turned against him and everything's portrayed as a threat.
Yeah, it's really sad because Jim Channon was really onto something, and unfortunately, everybody wanted to get to that level of that threat process, that threat narrative, and Jim was just stating that, "Hey, don't worry about it. Don't think about it that way." We agree with Jim Channon to this day. It's just amazing that we're able to talk to this legend, Jim Channon and Lynn Buchanan. Let's keep continuing with this documentary that we're giving out for free right here at Third Phase of Moon and Boots on the Ground.
The universe is not going to all this trouble with not having a great ending, and we're now going through the reversal in the third act where we think all is lost. No, Oil Can Harry is back out there and he's got Pearl Pierheart on the railroad track, and here comes the train. Yeah, and this is a faith test, guys and gals. So open up, get your heart in shape, stay out of here as much as you can, stop talking shit about each other, and don't be afraid of any one group. We're all responsible for the mess we're in, and we all have the ability to help us get out of it.
Now, think about what consciousness is. Consciousness is sort of a non-physical thing. The difference between the brain and the mind, and consciousness, remote viewing, show that these connections go much deeper than we usually take for granted in terms of what's possible. Remote viewing shows that you can get information from a distant, and distance includes space and time. You make connections with people in the past, in the future. Remote viewing kind of shows the ultimate connectivity in our world. We're all connected. We're all one. That's spiritual. And consciousness really is the thing which binds us all together.
Trees, lots of fruit. About 45% of our food on this land comes from above. The trees do the job. Then we have regular gardens with about 20%, and then we have edible landscaping that just fills in the cracks the whole way around. Altogether, we can feed 15 people, and we have water catchment for 15 people. So we're ready to go anytime. Yes, we love the fact that we support almost all kinds of animal life here, smaller versions, but there's at least 6 cats, and we have 12 species of birds, and that's one of the aviaries right here that we made out of a very sexy new dynamic design. And this is a Polish chicken, and she thinks she's in charge, and she's going to show you how she finds her food. So here is a Cherokee garden that the chief showed us how to make, and it's got corn in the middle, and over here is our tool shop. And the tool shop was made by simply taking these kind of pallets from the grocery store, knocking off the edge pieces, staining them a little bit, and making a place like that, and that's where we drive our vehicles in for vehicle work. So we have a surplus area and a, what do you call it? What kind of shop is that where you just put things, crazy things back together in different ways? Well, it's one of those. So like most shrines and botanical gardens, you gotta have maintenance. I was born in Tarrytown, New York in 1939.
What were your mother and father like?
My mother and father were budding upper class, I would say. dad, a super practical logistician. The family came from nuts and bolts. My mom's super empathic and deaf.
Tell me about your family's military history.
My family's military history goes back as far as George Washington and maybe to Rome 23 generations ago, and Mark Antony. I have Robert E. Lee as a fourth great-grandfather. So that side of the tradition was really in the gentleman department. That's what I'd say. They weren't all cunning fighters, but they were gentlemen. 1962, I got a degree from the University of Kentucky and a distinguished military graduate, regular Army commission. And off I went to Fort Riley, Kansas to be in the infantry. So first day in combat in Vietnam, 14 things happened. I'd been trained in 2 of them. I did the 2 things quite well, but the first thing that shocked me is when I asked my soldiers to shoot somebody they saw down the path.
Okay, guys, I'm just going to do a quick pause and a quick poll on everybody joining us from around the world. We're live right now. It's 11:56 p.m. Hawaii time. And if you want to tell us where you're joining us from around the world in your time zone, that would be awesome. But right now, I just want to give a question out to everybody. Do you believe what Jim Channon is telling us? That is what we're trying to find out. Is this guy lying or is he telling us the truth?
Yeah, it's so crazy, Blake. When we went out to visit this guy, he was laying on the ground, kind of like laid out. And it was very interesting. When we met this guy, he's like somebody you would never meet. He's so extraordinary, very unique gentleman. And it was a privilege to hang out with this guy for 3 days doing this shoot. Then we became friends with him. And shortly after, he died. But I do believe this guy's telling the 100% truth on what really happened.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why Jim Channon would, like, on his deathbed confession, as he like wanted to talk to Third Phase Moon, and he gave us this access to these exclusive interviews that we had with him for about a week. Seems to me that he's really genuine. Kevin Roy, could they be interdimensional entities or even demons, or not from an intergalactic, interstellar, in deep space? These are good questions, and we appreciate the support on that. It is something we all have to wonder. But right now it's 11:58 p.m. Hawaii time. We're doing it real time, listening to this documentary we're putting out for free here.
Yeah, what I really like coming up here too is that Jim Channon really gives his last words coming up near the end, and he really demonstrates what could happen for disclosure. It's pretty exciting.
They did, but they shot all overhead. They're all crack shots. I saw them on a rifle range with a machine gun at 500 feet, just knocking the head out of it. So, like history shows us, only 30% can eventually be taught to be happy about shooting someone. So it didn't turn out that later, it did turn out later in the war they were counting body count as a measure of a soldier's effectiveness and a leader's effectiveness, and it was totally corrupted at that point. The problem, dual problem of having my soldiers not being discovered in a killing zone made me train them to be stealthy. Having to find the enemy without them knowing we found them, I had to train them to be sentient, extrasensory. So both of those things carried through my career as I began to teach other leaders. 1978, I was assigned to the Public Affairs Office in Los Angeles to help the film industry get the Army right. And when I was there, it turned out that was a season when Hollywood didn't give a damn about getting the Army right. The Sergeant Bilko would have been fine, but nothing more than that. And that upset me, but I was also able to move about in California. So when I was elected to also be a part of this think tank, I just put my scouting shoes on. And I'm a good illustrator and a good writer, and I wrote that manual by myself at night, 1 page at a time, and then popped it on the Army. So after I left the Army, I found out that they had a name for me. It was called the Lightning Rod. And I think it stems from an experience at Fort Knox, where after collecting my material about all this lovely technology, I said, this would be better as a mythology. And so the name, as I was flying to Fort Knox on the plane, I got the word, the 1st Earth Battalion. It was just delivered to my head. So when I got there, I said, I'm not giving these guys another death by PowerPoint pitch, giving them the data, this type of tool, that type of tool, bullshit. That was not gonna, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So I'm standing there and they say, Colonel or Major Channon, I was a Major Channon, would you give us your report on your trip through these esoteric technologies? And I said, I'm not giving you an information briefing. Join me in the Officers Club on Wednesday night, and I will take you into a ceremony where you will see all these ideas put into real effect so you can feel them.
So right now, welcome everybody from around the world. We're about 700 live watchers as we're watching the 1st Earth Battalion that we're putting out for free on Third Phase of Moon. A lot of people say, hey, put that information out, we do it on a daily basis, but let's get into what Jim Channon is specifically going on in this. He's briefing people within the military in regards to the remote viewing project, and he's telling them what they need to hear. And he's basically, Jim Channon's telling me right now on how he disciplined these commanders, these generals, to understand what he was actually trying to tell.
Yeah, it's kind of off the hook. This gentleman, our friend Jim, could present this in front of these kind of people and have a straight face, but he knew exactly what he was doing. This guy's crazy like a fox, but he knows exactly what he's doing, implemented, and it's all just strategic. It's exactly what he wants to do. And this is important because I think everything that he says from here on out is pretty much fact.
And they just sort of went, no, California has been working on this guy. So sure enough, on Wednesday, they come in, I'd have them take off their shoes. I have the back of the Officers Club, all the lights down, some plastic plants in there, a candle on a $1 bill in the middle of the room. And I said, gentlemen, we're about to enter a ceremony. We will give resonance to the field we're in by saying the mantra, E for the earth. Ready? And they just stumbled their way through it. They were afraid to show their other guys that they were going to play this esoteric game, but I nailed them like a platoon sergeant. I said, look, that's not up to standard. This time, take a breath, if you will, before we make this sound. And they did. And it came out, and if you know anything about sound, it unifies the energy field. So then I had Colonel Mike Malone come out and do a black belt karate dance, a kata. And then they went, okay, this is real soldier stuff now. Now we're back into them. Then I told them the story of the $1 bill. And eventually I began to say, you are about to join the 1st Earth Battalion. This is our new world. And I gave them the rationale for that. And then they all kind of quietly walked out. Next day I go into the conference room. I'm standing outside, about to go in. As a guy out there says, he says, Colonel Channon, you're not to go in. And I could hear inside they were going, and I thought, oh, I've gone too far this time. And then the doors open, and the guy says, Colonel Channon, report. And I know that sound, so I went in and I stood at attention. The room was at attention, and they read me the orders, official orders, and I can show a copy of them, that I'm to be the commander of the 1st Earth Battalion, to go forward in space and time and dare to think the unthinkable. And that was the pop. And I'm still doing it because I'm still on orders.
This was the last day we spoke to Jim Channon, and it was amazing that, again, he gave us this interview. He wanted to share his story in regards to the remote viewing project and the 1st Earth Battalion. He called us up. He was so happy that he was able to get his message out. He said there was some kind of craft that was about to pick him up in his residence on the Big Island of Hawaii, that there was a mothership ready to pick him up. This is what he was telling us. Again, we couldn't confirm that, but he said that he's going to be taken away. Yeah, it was kind of at the same point too. He was very excited, Blake. At the same time, he thought that we could do future projects. And once this was done, we thought this wouldn't be the last time we would hang out with Jim and do other future projects. And shortly after, we got the message he was gone. And again, he was saying that they're outside my place and they're ready to pick me up. And these were the last words that we captured on film of Jim Channon from the leader of the 1st Earth Battalion that was a CIA, or maybe still a CIA project, known as Project Stargate, and the 1st Earth Battalion. Really a great loss. What a great man.
And I'm still doing it because I'm still on orders.
He's just a great personality. He always was just fun to walk. He'll be missed. The movie part of it, I personally think that was just too Hollywood. It just didn't take the importance and significance of remote viewing and consciousness in general as seriously as it should have. This is a real important subject. But I think the thing that I will remember him most for was his aggressive work in really wanting to lay out a place where ETs would land to make contact with Earth. I mean, you know, a lot of us more and more are coming to just accept that ETs are out there somewhere, but he basically invited them in. And that's remarkable, and I just have great respect for him for doing that in a very open way.
I was very sad to hear that Jim Channon had died, and you know, I guess the way he had died would be the way he would want to die, just to keel over. I think he was out working in his garden and just keeled over. And a lot of people think that Jim Channon was crazy because of the way he acted. I think crazy like a fox may be a better term. He was an absolute genius. But he was one of those flamboyant geniuses that come along once in a lifetime. I was very lucky to be friends with Jim. Sort of like Salvador Dali, you know, was one of those flamboyant geniuses. And Jim had made a presentation in front of a whole room full of generals one time, and he took flowers and gave flowers to each general. He was always doing something flamboyant in such a way that it would pull out the reaction that he wanted from a person. You never knew what he was going to say, never knew what he was going to do. But it was always for a purpose, and it was always a good purpose. Jim was one of the greatest people I've ever known. And the fact that he was a flamboyant genius like that and succeeded in the military shows just how much of a genius he was. Fantastic man. When he died, I think one of the brightest bulbs in the Christmas tree of life burned out.
Again, I have to agree with Lynn Buchanan. When we're lucky enough to meet up with Jim Channon, and it was kind of a circumstance because he lived on the exact island we live on here in Hawaii on the Big Island. And he lived on the Kohala Coast, and he had a really beautiful place and ecosystem that he developed. And he had a big grand picture of the future. And that's where we're about to get into right now, of what he thinks the way the world should get into the brain thought process if we were to make contact with ET and the technology behind it.
It came to a shock to all of us. We miss him dearly. We were deep into the project. Little did I realize the second interview with Jim Channon would be the last time I would see him. He had a lot of things to say that goes far beyond remote viewing. It's spirituality, it's lifestyle. What you're about to see is what makes Jim Channon an endearing figure in the world of remote viewing and beyond.
Sanctuary type of a tunnel here we go through. Deep in there are some beautiful flowers. This is all meant to be pretty semi-wild. You know, a little outdoor place to be by this temple over here. So, this is where my social architect's brain gets to plaster itself all over the walls and whatnot. I've downloaded some of this stuff from dreams and painted it just a dream at a time. I've calculated in some cases a certain set of...
Don't die. Nobody needs to die, Mike. It's okay. Just thanks for joining us. And we got Goof on in the house. We're live right now. And what's amazing is that Jim Channon had a whole blueprint of his plan in regards to the visitation. And it was amazing, his artistic representation within his home on how he foretold on how it should go down. Yeah, Blake, exactly. He's been working on this for years. You can see exactly on the detail and the artwork and the precision of his what he wanted to represent in the future. Let's watch it.
Things in a story. So here's a big compelling piece here, and a lot of people ask me, so how do you marry your spiritual intelligence with your architectural drawing and your painting and come up with something? Well, this guy started off as a dream and it only covered this part, but the message was Agartha rising. So you can see this piece rising. And after I put it up, I said, well, if we have the people from inside the planet coming forward, how do we want to greet them? And then on the other side here, we have all the extraterrestrials, ancestors, I prefer that word, coming in, big ships like this, into an area where biospheric recovery is a big part of the deal. And then we have our Earth battalions down here trained to receive them and as a team work together. In the meantime, we see spiritual intelligence growing and growing and growing, and eventually this will be a council of all the planetary starships. I call our planet a starship. It really is an amazing star. It was made, like all the rest of them. Seeing something about my military heritage and whatnot, here's a set of medals that both myself and
Are you kidding me? People want to disrespect Jim Channon, but did you see that panel of his displays of medal accolades within the military? Jim Channon was trying to get the truth out. This isn't any kind of bullshit. Sorry about the language, but what we're trying to share with you guys, and if people wake up that you're seeing stuff for real on Third Phase of Moon, and we're trying to get into the people that have the information.
my father won. So this is sort of blood.
What about this one right here? It has like a Russian symbol. Did you
It's-
work for the Russian government?
No, but my father got a Russian medal when his division landed on the river where they met the Russians. So, hello, they're in the picture too.
Which one of these medals are you most proud of?
The Bronze Star 3 times. Doesn't make me a superhero, but it meant I was steady. In order to get a Silver Star, you have to sort of lose a lot more soldiers, and I didn't do that.
All right, Jim, can you tell us about this soldier here?
Yes, this is first day of combat, first man shot. Got him on a helicopter in 4 minutes, and but I noticed he needs a little touch-up.
So he's your first soldier that you lost on the battlefield?
Yes, first and last.
You only lost one soldier that was under your command.
In 319 days of search and destroy, I lost one soldier, and I never shot an innocent civilian. So, this is a Balinese version of Rama, who's a Hindu god, but the Balinese know how to do things a little more sweetly, and I know how to make the statue look better by highlighting the parts that are a little bit mildewed. But look at that, it pops right out.
Okay, Jim, I know the movie was quite controversial, but I want to ask you, why did they not use your name, Jim Channon, and they went with the Django?
See what happens in an emotional situation. The time I've
Say that goes far beyond remote viewing. It's spirituality. It's life.
One of these medals are you most proud of? They not use your name, Jim Channon, and they went with the Django.
Blake, that was my choice. I only had the first screenplay in my hands, and from what I could tell, we didn't need to incriminate soldiers and officers and scientists who had stuck their neck out this far to be creative by having Hollywood make another sort of, joke out of it. No, enough Sergeant Bilko.
At the end of the movie, they portray you as escaping from a military base in Iraq and putting LSD in the food, and this was your escape opportunity. Was this real?
Again, I'm just trying to tell everybody that we're trying to get to the truth and we're asking the big questions. What's interesting is that the Men Who Stare at Goats fictionalize this whole story of Jim Channon, the guy we're talking to right now, the late Jim Channon. And we were the last to talk to him. And we're asking him about the whole idea about how he escaped and he LSD'd everybody in regards to that movie. And I'm not sure if you guys watched The Men Who Stare at Goats, but they basically said that with Jeff Bridges' character that they escaped and Jim Channon LSD'd everybody to have this massive hallucinations. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, Jim's kind of was upset about it, but he said in the very beginning of this documentary, he said that Hollywood was going to change it up and they're going to change up the whole narrative of everything. And they kind of stole his idea and then flipped it on a curve. And this is straight up, and he is almost embarrassed on what he saw with the men who stare at ghosts. And unfortunately, Jim Channon right now is in this documentary is talking straight up for the first time.
And nobody's ever covered this since we've released this documentary for, I think 2017 we shot this, and people still are not covering or asking these questions to congressmen or people about this whole aspect. Again, Jim Channon speaks about this. Listen.
No, they just made up, that was sort of any site Middle East, any army compound Middle East, but it was hilarious. And so it's good. Yeah, but me, kind of fat, shirt out, sipping things that dribble down my face, acting sort of out of it, not accurate.
They kind of made you look like a klutz.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, when you get a screenplay from BBC, you know that MI6 probably wrote it. So they didn't want to make me any more famous than necessary.
So you believe that the MI6 might be behind discrediting your message, basically, to the army, and now they're discrediting the messenger.
You don't have to study the broadcasting world very long to find out that BBC and MI6 are pretty much the same thing, and they've been in the business of defaming people they wanted to for a long time. The public needs to know is the Army has no value in going around and spending time killing goats. If you can make somebody go unconscious for 2 hours, which might have been a real objective, then you can walk into the place you want to walk into, do your business, come out, and they wake up okay. It was a peaceful incursion. That's the idea.
Talk about the super soldier.
That was about increasing the capacity of a soldier to survive on the battlefield. That was about strength, ability to carry extra equipment, having a more volatile set of weapons. Paranormal soldiers needed a whole nother set.
All right, so super soldiers and paranormal soldiers, they're altogether different. Tell me about the paranormal soldier.
The paranormal soldier has more range to discover what's out there, and there are a lot of tools for that. We used to have men in the Army who were all hunters. Well, they knew how to judge what they heard. They knew how to feel life force. They knew how to look at the trail. They knew all those sentient skills. But the last generations of soldiers haven't had those. So they're super soldiers because they can get there, but they're paranormal soldiers so they don't get ambushed.
There's been rumors stated that the military is preparing for a major false flag, a fake alien invasion, using possibly holographic imagery to deceive the public. Have you heard anything about this? Should we worry about this?
Of course, part of the military, Air Force, Army, are all aware of what might happen if things change. False flags, the government's been doing that consistently for 50 or 100 years. It's so old, they don't even have to defend themselves anymore from it.
So let me ask you this. Do you believe that there are alien hybrid beings within our own governments in control of the people?
Again, we're going to get back to this documentary, but there's a lot of questions out there. Where are these extraterrestrials coming from? Are these grays? Are they cookie cutters? Are they biological symbiotic beings that are being sent to us from another universe, another galaxy? we're not exactly sure, but wow, when I talked to the late Jim Channon, he talks about a lot of stuff in regards to his theory of how this psychological psychological being of humanity should go to. He gets in depth on it. He's again, it's so sad that we don't have Jim talking with us right now because he was so eloquent with his words on how he could describe on how we should proceed within this communication with these beings.
Yeah, he had his own protocol, Blake. He basically laid the timeline out, and he's very prepared. And if you follow the First Earth Battalion and everything that's kind of been said throughout this documentary, it kind of lays out what could be a possibility, and for the world and our future.
So we're about 800 live watchers right now, and we're doing it live. And again, we're putting this documentary out for free. So if you guys could support the channel, again, we have PayPal, we have the super chat, super stickers. It really helps because we really worked hard getting to these CIA insiders and asking the big questions, and we're bringing it to you live right now here on Third Phase of Moon. Guys, you're the best. Let me say Jerry with the $20 euro. Appreciate that, Jerry. Appreciate that support. We're doing it right now. Let's proceed.
Can't imagine an intelligent galaxy that wouldn't have penetrated all aspects of our local civilization, since we are the petri dish. We're the experimental culture. And so, every imaginable combination would be found somewhere. Mostly they're good at staying either out of sight underground or modifying their appearance to look like us. I hope they're here.
Over 6 million people report it every year worldwide that they've been abducted by aliens, taken up into spacecraft. Some people say that these aliens are nothing but manufactured biological creatures made by our own governments to do a false flag of an alien abduction phenomenon. Do you believe that aliens are truly abducting people? Is this real?
I believe that the smarter intelligences in the galaxy know that planet Earth is an experiment. So they know everybody's going to live eternally. So they're coming in to get information about their own genetic improvements. So in some cases that means you put somebody on a table and take their DNA. If it means you cut the rectum out of a cow very carefully to get some genetic material, that's all used for their upgrade. They're just being normal, opportunistic, awake, civilized beings. Yes, they want our genetics as well as our mineral deposits and things that they can't normally.
They want our genetics and our mineral deposits. Pretty amazing stuff. What this CIA insider is telling us right now before he passed away while we were doing this documentary. James Head, thanks so much for the super sticker. We got a member here, Debbie. Appreciate that, Debbie. And we also have I want to thank some other people that are doing the super chat. We got Shan Rockin Persad. Sorry for butchering that, but man, this is incredible. Coming in from a late CIA insider, Jim Channon, telling us this.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why they're underneath the planet. There's so much going on underneath. Area 51, by the way, is a tiny little airport compared to, maybe 1,000 miles of underground tunnels, all operating in the honeycomb, soft part of the crust, so they can just wander through. We need a place for the people who are, say, draconian. You look at them, they're all white, they have scales, they have everything they need to live underground where they've always lived. So we should get used to them as neighbors and figure out how we can cooperate. We have 1,000 cultures on this planet. We have many genotypes and phenotypes, animals, and we're under pressure to learn how to get along. we provide that library to the people in the galaxy and some other materials that are available to that aren't available to them, and we will be accepted. That's our best defense strategy. Go planet!
Imagine a world where this was taken for granted. That's what I see as our next paradigm. The next big paradigm shift is going to be a consciousness paradigm shift, where things like remote viewing, telepathy, maybe even psychokinesis are taken for granted.
It's a step-by-step process. Back when they started giving me pictures in envelopes, there's no way I could have told you what was in those envelopes, but I followed the steps they had taught me, and it worked.
Accepted within society, it'll be a positive aspect of society. But with this comes the idea that there may be no secrets. If you can remote view things which we would normally think would be hidden, well, maybe you get to a place where there are no secrets. Imagine a world where there's no need for secrets. That would be a true paradigm shift.
Are you guys ready to rock? Well,
I'm
let me
Jim
tell
Shannon.
you.
Call
Jim
myself
Shannon
a
rock.
social architect. One of the things social architects do is they design spaces so that people can have a bigger sense of life force, actually an experience. There is data, then information, then knowledge, then wisdom, then experience, then maybe rapture, where we're looking at the highly charged experience you can get when you bring a group of people together in full play. And if it's colorful, you'll pay attention to it. And if it has music behind it, it'll be even better. So I've helped people make up stories about their organizations and tried to take them to another level. I never asked people in corporations what their higher purpose was if they didn't go, Jack, what is our higher purpose? John, we're going to be out here at 1600 tonight. We got 2 hours to figure this out. Get on it. No, they never says, you can't ask us that. That's a cultural question. No, they just don't know much about culture. So here we are, a connected civilization, looking for something as big as what we did in the last century, which was to connect the planet. And that something is to go for paradise.
Project Stargate. Apparently, 1995, they eliminated the project, but I'm sure they're still working it. That's what we're trying to find out. Just like Project Blue Book, they continue to roll. And we appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Be safe. Take care. Buckle up. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you next time. Signing out. We'll see you.